Great. Thank you, Marcia. Takes two brains to do anything, I think. So in the Pali language, which was very similar to the language the Buddha spoke, wise intention translates sama. Sama means wise. Sankappa. And we like to work with Pali words, um, even though, foreign languages can be a little bit off-putting when you're trying to learn something. But I think it's worth it to learn some of the Pali words as you go through the teachings, because translations are not always on the mark. Sometimes translators have a point of view. For example, there were many Christian missionaries in Asia at the time that the Buddhist teachings were translated, and many of them were translated by Christian missionaries. So sometimes the Buddhist message gets obscured by the translator's point of view. But if we go back to the Pali and we listen to people who know Pali tell us what the detailed meaning of something is, it can be a little bit better. So that's why you hear Pali from us, and hopefully you have patience with it. So what is intention? In everyday speech, intention means having a very strong will to do something, having an aim, having a plan. It kind of has this feeling that nothing is going to stop me. I'm going to do this. And a lot of times we have intentions for self-improvement, like I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to quit smoking, I'm going to start exercising, things that are good for me. I may intend to become a good writer, learn some kind of skill. I may intend to learn to ski or start a coin collection. All these things are intentions. Intentions can be wise, such as intending to improve one's health, these examples that I gave, planning things that are good and healthy for our lives, working on relationships so they can be better, being kind to someone in need. All these are wise intentions. But intentions can also be unwise. We are not always aware of our unwise or intentions. An unwise intention is a harmful intention. So I can intend to be cruel to someone. And of course, I wouldn't be aware of that, because it's probably I would start to examine it as soon as I became aware of it. But sometimes it's already come out of your mouth before you realize what you've done. I may want to embarrass someone, expose someone. I may be tempted to steal something, to take something that's not freely given. So, and that might turn into an intention if I'm not being conscious. If we have intentions that are motivated by anger or greed or delusion, they are harmful intentions, unwise intentions. So the Buddha said that intention is closely related to karma. There's a cause and effect. Generally, we think of karma as related to our actions. If I do this, it'll create a certain kind of action, a certain kind of karma for me. But actually, to be more precise, karma is not caused by our actions. Karma is caused by the intention behind our actions. The Buddha said the words that karma is intention. So you can perform the same action with wise intention or with unwise intention. Just a simple example, a person gives up their seat on the bus to someone who's older and a little wobbly on their feet. If the person does this out of kindness and caring, That's wise intention and is related to, for cause and effect, good karma. But if the person does this exact same action because they're wanting everyone on the bus to notice them and have a good opinion of them, and they're just doing it for kind of ego reasons, then the same action is an unwise intention and is not going to create good karma. So that's the kind of basic way of looking at intention. But another way to look at intention is to see it as a field of energy that is very powerful. In fact, this may be the energy that actually creates our world, and that's the direction that I want to go with in this talk. We may not be aware of all our intentions, but perhaps everything in our world arises from our intentions. Intention is the second fold of the Eightfold Path, which is the fundamental teaching of Buddhism. So the very first fold is wise understanding. Wise understanding, or also known as wise view. And then the second fold is wise intention, sometimes known as wise thought. And the reason that they're ordered like that is because intentions arise out of our understanding. If we have a deep understanding of things, of how the world works, of greed, hatred, and delusion, of the impermanence of all things, of suffering, of the way that our self likes to run the whole show, this imaginary self, then we have wise understanding. And once we have wise understanding, it leads to wise intention. The Eightfold Path is divided into three parts, and these first two make up the Eightfold Path is divided into three parts. I hope I just said that. This is the first part, and it's called the wisdom part. So wise understanding and wise intention are the wisdom part of the Eightfold Path. And just to orient you to the rest of the Eightfold Path parts, the next four are called the ethical parts of the path. And the ethics include wise action, wise speech, wise livelihood, wise effort. These are all actions. These are where we put our understanding and intention into reality, into action. And then the last two parts, last two items make up the end of the Eightfold Path and are called the section of mental development. So you have wisdom, you have ethics, and then you have resulting mental development. And the last two things are mindfulness and concentration. So I hope that's helpful as a way of looking at intention and its orientation. Very fundamental. It's the second thing that happens before we start acting, before we start doing things, and before we develop ourselves mentally. Intention always comes after understanding because we can't really intend anything and carry through on it unless we have the understanding to back it up. So I think that's really what wisdom is. Developing this understanding of how we want to proceed and letting that understanding inspire us to carry through. Carrying it through is the ethical part, the action, the speech, the livelihood, the effort. So let's look at a simple example of intention. Suppose you've decided that you want to get more exercise. You have this understanding of your overall health, and you see very clearly that a bit more exercise, like walking every Tuesday and Thursday for an hour with your friend, is going to have a very good effect on your health. So you have this understanding. And you get inspired with your understanding, and you set the intention that you're going to go for a walk at noon every Tuesday and Thursday. And since today's Monday, that's tomorrow. And you're going to go for a walk at noon tomorrow. That's your intention, as part of this larger intention to walk every Tuesday and Thursday, as part of this wise understanding of how it will help your health. And that understanding inspires you. You want to be more healthy. So now it's Tuesday, and it's 11:15, and you start to reconsider. Well, I don't really feel like walking. It's the weather's not that nice, and kind of achy. It's probably not a good day to walk. And then you start all these uh, excuses in your mind, and you just don't feel like it, and you don't follow through on your intention. I'm sure that's happened to all of us. But it's interesting to look at it that you've lost your inspiration that you had when you set the intention, because you've lost your wise understanding. You are unable at 11:15 on Tuesday, with the fact that you don't feel that great and your leg hurts and walking is going to be a little uncomfortable and you've got to drive all the way over there, and um, you've lost your understanding of your overall picture of your health, and that was inspiring you, and now it's not. So I think that's a really good way to see the understanding inspires us to follow through on our intention. But when we lose the understanding, um, and some of us have a big rebel inside. I know me. Um, I gave a Dharma talk on rebellion one time, and John said to me, anybody who's a Buddhist is a rebel. I thought that was pretty interesting. But what that means for me is that if it's good for me, um, I'm not interested. I've had to work with that a lot in my life. So you understood that it would be really good for you to move more, that you would feel better. You wanted that. You wanted to behave in a skillful and healthful way. You connected up with the big picture of your health and your life and what would make you feel good. But at 11 a.m., when it's getting time to walk and get in your car and go over there and get ready, your understanding isn't strong enough. And you cannot stay connected to that big picture. You're no longer inspired. You've forgotten. So you don't walk and you don't fulfill your intention. And then what happens is the ego jumps in. And you feel guilty and you're a failure and you never follow through on anything. But actually, all that has nothing to do with intention. Intention's not about failing. This is just the ego. The ego has a rating system. It believes that we are what we do, what we accomplish, how our body looks, what we own, how much money we have in the bank. None of that is true. That's just the ego's way of sorting things out. To talk a little bit more about the ego, I want to introduce an idea that you may have heard before called the 8 worldly winds. And this is an important idea in Buddhism because these are the areas of the ego, the 8 worldly dharmas. And I'll just say them, and then I'll talk about each one just a little. But the 8 worldly dharmas are in pairs, 4 pairs: pleasure and pain, praise and blame, fame and disgrace, gain and loss. So these winds blow through our lives. We're always after pleasure, aren't we? And we are always avoiding pain. So those are the first 2 of the worldly winds. And the ego, lives on these. Pleasure is, you go in a restaurant, Tony Bernhard has the example, you open the menu, and it's what's going to give me pleasure? What do I desire? It's not, what's no good on this menu. It's all about the pleasure. You get up in the morning and you think, what's going to give me pleasure today? So this pleasure pain rules our existence to a large degree. The second one is praise and blame. We would like to be praised, and we very much don't want to be blamed for anything. The third one is similar, but on a larger scale, fame and disgrace. What am I known for? I want to be known for good things. I don't want to be in disgrace. And the last one, gain and loss. The ego rates us on how much stuff we've got, what have we gained in the way of things, education, reputation, and what are we losing? The ego doesn't want to lose anything. So those are the 8 worldly winds. And they come in and kind of occupy us a lot, as opposed to working with our understanding and our intention. The ego takes over, and we think about all these things quite a bit. But it's not really who we are. A few years ago, I was poking around on a bookshelf, one of these bookshelves actually, and a 6 CD set fell off the shelf and just about hit me in the head. And it was on intention. And so I took it as the universe making a recommendation, and I listened to the CDs. And they were by Dr. Wayne Dyer. I think he's a doctor. And he talked about intention. And the first thing he said was that it has nothing to do with our ego, nothing to do with success or failure. Even though we are always like, our ego gets in there and wants to have success with our intentions and gets upset if we have failure with our intentions. But that's like an illusion. It has nothing to do with straining to achieve. Wayne Dyer said that intention is an energy that we can connect with. It's an energy field that we can set up in our own lives. It's a pool of energy, a field of vibration, and we can always tap into it. And once we tap into it, we connect. And we connect with everybody else. And things flow when we're connected to that pool of intention. I really like that idea a lot. Wayne Dyer quoted one of my favorite sort of philosophers, Carlos Castaneda. If you know Carlos Castaneda, he writes about his teacher, Juan Matus, a sorcerer in Mexico. And Carlos Castaneda was a graduate student at UCLA, and there's no evidence that they really ever went down to Mexico and worked with this sorcerer, but he wrote like 10 fabulous books about his time with this sorcerer. Wayne Dyer said that a sorcerer is one who is in touch with the source. I love that. I never thought of it that way. So here's a quote that from Carlos Castaneda. In the universe, there is an immeasurable, indescribable force, which those who live close to the source call intention. Absolutely everything that exists in the entire cosmos is attached to intention by a connecting link. I'll say that again. And absolutely everything that exists in the entire cosmos is attached to intention by a connecting link. Those who live close to the source concern themselves not only with understanding and explaining this connecting link, but also with cleansing it of the numbing effects brought about by the concerns of living at the level of ordinary consciousness. I'll read that again. Those who live close to the source concern themselves not only with understanding and explaining this connecting link, but also with cleansing it of the numbing effects brought about with the concerns of living at the level of ordinary consciousness. I think we all know what that means, the level of ordinary consciousness. I mean, you get up, you got things to do, you have to brush your teeth, you got to get out of the house by a certain time, you have to drive, there's traffic, there's the store. this level of ordinary consciousness that we sink down to just to get everything done and to be on top of stuff is numbing to our connection with this immeasurable, indescribable force. So as those people who may want to be close to the source, so we want to live close to the source because it's inspiring and it allows us to fulfill our intentions and move away from our ego. But we have this ongoing balance we have to maintain between ordinary consciousness and higher consciousness. So it's a matter of remembering, of connecting up to that source and keeping our connection to that source open and flowing as best we can. And it's kind of sometimes when I look at the amount of time that I spend connected to the source, I'm a little bit appalled that it's not more, because I just can sink down to the level of ordinary consciousness and stay there very easily. But it's a matter of remembering. Buddhism talks about 3 types of intention. And I think they're related to greed, hatred, and delusion. So the first type of intention is renunciation. And we don't really like the word renunciation in our culture very much because we don't want to give up anything and renounce things. Plus, it's like related to the word nun, and the last thing we want to be is a nun, right? The nuns are renunciants. That's what it's short for. But what it really means, all it really means, is resisting the pull of desire. That's what renunciation is. And desire is the way of the world. We are desire machines. I always have that picture of the 2-year-old in the supermarket sitting in the grocery cart and pointing at the candy and screaming for his mom to give him some of that. And I know that 2-year-old inside. Desire. We run after what we want. We feel separated from it. We feel separated from one another. But when we can get into a state of connectedness and wake up to our true nature as not separated from one another, when we can tap into this pool of intention, we don't lack anything. We don't lack money. We have everything. We don't lack status. We don't lack fame. We don't care about that. Because what we care about is this connection. And this is right view. The second type of intention, so the first type of intention is renunciation. I intend to renounce the pull of desire. The second is renouncing the pull of hatred. And that's called non-harming. And how do we renounce the pull of hatred? We renounce it with metta, with this wish that others be happy. Because when we connect with our true nature, we are loving beings. And we do that, and we develop our capacity for loving kindness and connect up with our true nature, our true intention, which always includes kindness. And finally, delusion. I think when we give in to desire and ill will, we enter states that are not guided by compassion, that are delusional states, cruel, aggressive, violent. And if we can come back into intention to be harmless, to not be in delusion, to wish that others be free from suffering, that's the third type of renunciation. All 3 about connecting to this source, to this pool of intention. On the night of his enlightenment, the Buddha is said to have, as his thoughts arose, he sorted them. And he could see that every thought that arose was even either motivated by greed, hatred, or delusion, or it was motivated by renunciation, non-harming, and loving kindness, opposite of delusion. So he worked to sort it. Can you imagine sorting your thoughts as they arise, the kind of awareness and presence that would take? I just love that idea. I can imagine him doing that. I can't quite imagine myself doing it, but I can imagine him doing it. So he worked to strengthen the thoughts that were motivated by a good intention and expel the former from his mind. Just the actual quote from the sutta. The Buddha said, quote, "Intention, I tell you, is karma. Intending, one creates karma by way of body, speech, and mind." So how is karma related to intention? I just want to close with a couple last ideas and then open it up to discussion with you. Two quotes. Einstein said, "Nothing happens until something moves." That's an interesting quote because nothing moves without energy. Movement is always a manifestation of energy. So nothing happens until there's energy. I like that. Seeing intention as energy is really helpful to me. In fact, seeing everything as energy is really helpful to me. And there's a quote about this, kind of taking energy to the next level. And it's from Max Planck, who was a theoretical physicist and who originated the quantum theory. I promise not to talk about intention and quantum theory, don't worry. But as Max Planck received the Nobel Prize, this is what he said, explaining how energy is the source of all things. And just before I read the quote, I want to say that he's going to talk about matter. And he's going to talk about matter on the atomic level, those little tiny particles, the electron, the neutron, the protons. So that maybe just telling you that in advance will help you to understand this. And I'll read it twice. Here we go. Max Planck. "As a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you the result of my research about matter. I can tell you this much. There is no matter as such. All matter exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particles of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together." I'll read it one more time because I just think it's not only is the universe made of force and energy, but the atom, the very most elemental level, or used to be anyway, of matter, exists because of energy. So here we go. "As a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you the result of my research about matter. I can tell you this much. There is no matter as such. All matter exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particles of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together." So intention as a force. So I'd love to hear what you think, how this affects you, if it makes sense to you, if it's inspiring to you, about what you think about intentions and hanging into them. Feel free to just unmute yourself, and I think I'll stop recording. And